All right, here we go again. We are going to write an amazing secondary source answer on one of my favorite topics, and in fact, it's one of the most widely written about topics in American history, which is the Civil War, and that's period 5 from 1844 to 1877. The Civil War is one that historians continue to debate and to talk about. And once again, this is how history evolves. Is history we're looking at here is not a set of facts, but people's opinion on items from here. And so the Civil War is one that innate passion for people alike, because you're going to have people who have strong opinions because it was about opinions on things, and that's what the war broke out with. And so historians over time have largely debated big questions on the Civil War. And so we're going to use our ABE strategy to dissect some of those opinions on the Civil War, and then we're going to look at how they form their arguments, how they support their arguments, and then we are going to delve in and find some examples that can support the arguments that they're making. So let's go ahead and look at a sample question to get a feel for what this looks like. So here is a sample question. Once again, you've got two historians that are going to make a statement. And if we look at here at question A, it says we want to look at two things for question A. Is it a similarity or is it a difference? Almost most of the time it's difference, and so we always want to double check. And then we want to know the topic, because there's a lot of things in the Civil War that we could debate. And so what exactly are these individuals debating? And we want to do that before we read what they're looking at here. So if we look at question A, we can see right here that, no surprise, but we always want to double check, we're looking at differences here. And so we're going to assume that these two people have two different opinions, and we're going to use that to help us understand what they're saying. But what's the topic? There's a lot of things we could talk about with the Civil War. So it looks like here that we're looking at the influence of slavery on the Civil War. And so how did slavery affect the Civil War? Once again, there are so many opinions. You have some people who are saying, "Whoo, that is a lot of influence, and it was all about slavery from the get-go." And then you have other people who are saying, "No, slavery was a component, but not as big as maybe states' rights, or maybe not as big as regional differences." So we got to figure out what these historians think. Is it a lot, or is it not a lot? How much did slavery influence those individuals there? And then B and C want to look at examples, and this is where you have to be the historian. You have to go out and find an example, pull it in and say, look, this event supports this historian's opinion because. And so we're going to keep using ABE to help us out with that a little bit there. So let's look at how someone wrote this. So go ahead and pause, read through these two historians' opinion, and maybe get a feel yourself of how you think that you would answer this. And then when you're ready, let's look at how someone wrote this component here. All right, remember, question A always wants to know what is their argument. And so we need to state what the difference is, we need to state why they think it's different, and how they think it's different, that because, and kind of add on to it there. So let's go ahead and look at option A. So this individual wrote, Abzug's and Pinsker's interpretation on the influence of slavery on the Civil War differ on what groups increased the pressure of slavery. As Abzug argues, abolitionism and its religious influence changed Americans' perspective on slavery because it changed the question of slavery into a moral issue that needed to be addressed immediately. However, Pinsker states the pressure of slavery was by Northerners who helped the slaves escape, because this created a symbolic division that would later increase to actual violence. So once again, we're looking at here, this is an opinion piece on what groups increased it. So remember, Abzug was saying, look, it was the religious influence of the abolitionists. And Pinsker is saying, no, it was the Northerners who were helping the slaves escape. And they're giving an argument. And so they support where Abzug says, look, it was the abolitionism and religion, because religion made it emotional. Religion made it so that they had to make a stand. And so because of that, it increased the pressure because they felt that this was something that had to be addressed immediately because I'm emotionally connected to this issue. Now, Pinsker was saying, look, these Northerners helped, And what happened is because they were helping, they were kind of already divided and kind of subverting them and kind of going behind the Southerners' back, and the Southerners felt that way. And so it's actually going to lead to violence because the Northerners are going to step in and say, look, we're going to help these slaves escape whether you like it or not. So how can we support these historians? Well, let's look at Absguz first. And he basically says, remember, because they felt like it was emotional and it was abolitionism, and they connect abolitionism to religion, that's what put pressure on the Civil War. So was there anything in history that can support that? Well, an event that supports Absguz's argument that abolitionists led to increased pressure on slavery was the publishing of abolitionist Harry Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Here is my example. Now let's give further details. This book, written in response to the Fugitive Slave Act, showed many individuals who were indifferent to slavery the horrors of slavery, and brought many to see the need to abolish slavery. Its popularity led to increased pressure that would later lead to the Civil War. Are you convinced? Well, let's look at Pinsker's then. An event that supports Pinsker's argument that Northerners who helped slaves escape increased the conflict between the North and the South was, here is our example, John Brown's raid and capture. John Brown attempted to start a slave rebellion in Virginia. While it failed, John Brown became viewed as a villain in the South and a hero in the North. This division on how people viewed him illustrates the division emerging between the North and the South. So remember, two opposing opinions, we explain their opinions, and then we find examples to back up their opinions. So here's another example that you're going to look at, that you're going to write about. Remember, look at question A, look for if it's similarity or difference, and look for the topic. And then after you notice the topic, read through it, assume that they're different, and then look at those differences, and then think of any type of examples that you could use to answer their argument.